one game that I'm sure that neither side was really too happy with the outcome of this game. Georgia escapes Florida 34-20. Don't let the scoreline deceive you either, because this game was tied up at 20 with about 5 minutes left to go in the game. I know the Georgia fans were sweating. I know Florida fans were celebrating, but thinking about what could have been. DJ Lagway leaves this game with an injury. He gets carted off the field. Aiden Warner comes in. He was not very good, but he's a third string quarterback. It's about what you'd expect in that kind of game. And he led the team to a potential comeback. Well, they came back. And Georgia continues to not be a very good first half team. They go to the locker room 13-6 deficit, a 13-6 deficit. And I mentioned on this podcast beforehand, Abe, while you were on vacation off gallivanting across the seven seas, and I said that Billy Napier he might mess around and save his job. And I think he's going to get a win, at least one win that he's not supposed to over his next couple of the next slog where you got to play LSU, you got to play Texas. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. You got to play Ole Miss, and then you got to play Florida State. You got to get 2 wins out of that. You got to go to a bowl game. I don't know. I think they're a better team than their record might indicate. They're 28-3 is the record of their 4 losses this season. It's Miami, it's Florida, or excuse me, it's Texas A&M, it's Georgia, and it's Tennessee. And I know that no one's going to give you any moral victories. There are no victories in defeat, but that's a better football team than I think the record might indicate. Billy Napier, I think he was buried, dead and buried. He was gone, but I think he's coached his way into a potential saving of his job. And am I wrong in that calculation?
Well, it's going to be impossible to gauge. You're playing a walk-on transfer quarterback who played at Yale. This guy is not built for SEC play. It will help that you'll have a week to prepare him and whatnot, but it seems like the hamstring injury to DJ Lagway is relatively severe. I don't know if it's season-ending, but pretty severe. I don't think what's his name, Adrian Wayner, whatever it is, something like that. I don't think he's walking into DK Royal Stadium and beating Texas. Warner, sure. There's an R in there. I just don't think he's walking into Texas and winning that game. And so it's impossible to gauge Billy Napier and what can happen the rest of the season. I'll say this for Florida fans. Very unfortunate because deprive the potential of a monumental upset. And this is obviously a different game if DJ Lagway is playing in the second half. It's also a different game if Billy Napier had a little bit more guts and the decision to try a 50-plus yard field goal early in the third quarter, snap goes awry and Georgia takes over in Florida territory. I mean, they lost 35 yards on that play. It was 4th and 2. You have to go for it. And I know you kicked a long field goal right before half, but you did that because the clock was working against you and it was before half. I thought you had to go for it in that moment. They didn't. It certainly cost them. But for Florida, defense played inspired once again. It did fall apart a little bit in the second half as they were back on the field and back on the field and back on the field with Warner being unable to sustain a drive. They had the one made up of a couple big plays. But Georgia showcased a couple of the issues that we've seen. Too many 7, 8, 9, 10-yard runs for the Florida Gators. Obviously, Carson Beck is a problem, and it's just tough to defend winning a national championship with a quarterback that's going to turn the ball over like that. 3 turnovers, although I do think the last one from him, he was hit pretty good as he was throwing. The ball kind of got popped up, but there were 2 turnovers before that. One was thrown into triple coverage, and it's just like, what are you doing? But at the same time, I think we've seen there's been times where if Kirby Smart was going to make a quarterback change, he would have. He's not going to do it, at least not in my opinion.
No.
And so you're kind of just stuck hoping that in the big plays, in the big moments, Carson Beck can be because we've seen him be very good. At times he has, but at other times he just completely loses focus and puts the ball in danger way too often. And you're just hoping in the big games, if you can reach the playoffs or the Final Four, an SEC title game, 1, you don't start this slow in the first half, and 2, that he doesn't turn the ball over with the enormity that he has in recent weeks. But I mean, what does he have? 4 multi-interception games? I mean, yeah, it's more than that. So He's got to clean it up. There's no doubt about it, because I thought the rest of the supporting cast was there. I just thought he wasn't good enough to make it an easy win, but it was a win for Georgia. And quite frankly, they, at the end of the day, you do what you have to do. You won a pretty heated and respected rivalry game. And whether it's not your fault that DJ Lagway goes down, I mean, you kept your focus and fought through it, and it wasn't handed to Georgia. It certainly would have helped if Lagway is there for Gators fans, but it wasn't handed. They showed some fight, and they had a scoring drive of their own in the moments with Warner as the backup. But would have liked to have seen Lagway. I think a lot of people, both at the stadium and probably watching at home, a lot of people believe Florida wins this game if DJ Lagway does not get hurt. I don't know if that's the case, but they would have at least given themselves a chance. I didn't think they had a chance when he was out.
Yeah, and I will say this too, because Florida does tie this game, and I'm going to talk about Carson Beck because it warrants talking about. It warrants conversation, further conversation. When the lights come on and the lights get big and they need a clutch play, Carson Beck has been a great player. Florida ties this game up at 20. 5 minutes left in this game. Georgia needs a drive. They need big plays. That's where he shined. And I don't understand what changes for him in those instances, because he finds Arian Smith and then he connects with that one for 25 yards or something like that. And then they just rolled. From that point, they just rolled all the way down the field. Very, very similar to what they did against Texas on the road in that game, where Texas cuts into it. He throws ironically another interception. And Texas cuts into a 1-score game. They need an answer. He drives them down the field. He brings it back up to 2 scores. And that was all she wrote in that game, right? He does it again in this game. He drives them down, gets the intercept, or he throws the interception, or he continues throwing interceptions. Florida comes back out. They tie it up, and then he drives them down the field, and then they get the pick. And then they ice the game with their second touchdown. With like about 2 minutes or something to go in the game. That was all she wrote at that point. But I don't know what it is about him in these other moments, because Carson Beck cannot be throwing these interceptions, because you're cutting into your team's ability to win football games, because they were moving the ball. Like, Georgia was moving the ball very effectively. The offense looks like it's got the pieces, and they were humming. Nate Frazier, he was cooking on the ground. I know that you lose Trevor Etienne to a rib injury. That's going to be very important to follow, because those are pesky injuries for a running back. But I mean, he offsets it with 309 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it's unacceptably bad. It just means that he doesn't trust his weapons, and he's forcing it into windows that he shouldn't be doing it. And maybe it's just the fact that he misses Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, which, I mean, look, anybody would, but his regression has been so bad, and it's cost Georgia of the ability to win football games. It cost them that game against Alabama, and it very nearly cost them against Texas. It nearly cost them this game against Florida. It nearly cost them against Kentucky. It's inconsistent. But when he's at his best, you've seen how good of a slinger he is. The dude can throw the ball all over the field, but it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. If you are not dominant, you can't lose the turnover battle as badly as you've been doing it. Now, if you're Florida, I hate it for them. I mean, losing DJ Lagway. Has there been an update on Lagway and his status for the rest of the season? Do you know?
No, I haven't seen any updates on the hamstring. They knew pretty immediately it was decently severe, but I haven't seen any actual timeline yet.
Yeah. Well, if you're Florida, you know what you got to do. You got to win at least 2 of your next 4 games, right? And the going gets no easier. But if you're Georgia, you also got to slog in these next 2. You're on the road in Oxford, Mississippi. You're taking on a Jackson Dart-led team that just pummeled Arkansas. They're playing at a really high level. Then you get Tennessee, and you get a ruthless defense. You don't think they'd be more than happy to turn you over a couple of times? You got to get through these next 2 weeks. I don't think Georgia Tech's going to have the firepower anymore to really contend with you this season. UMass, I mean, come on. But Ole Miss and Tennessee, it's if they play like they did on Saturday, I would not be surprised if they lose both of those games. I wouldn't put it past them, especially in this year of the SEC, where we've seen some of these wild results, Ole Miss can throw the ball all over the yard. They're going to put a lot of pressure on that defense. Your pass rush needs to be playing at a really high level. But the offense cannot continue to turn the ball over. It's that simple. It looks like they're starting to find their form in every category except for the quarterback position, which is so ironic because that was the biggest strength coming into the season.